Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to The Move, presented by Patron Tequila. We have an interesting Patron of the day, just so you know. We'll get to that in a second. I'm your host, Lance Armstrong, alongside my co-host, JB Hager. And talking about Stage 8 into Amiens. Another sort of slow, uneventful day. Beautiful weather, not a lot of wind. And another stage victory for... the guy that I said wasn't going to win any stages in the first week still got... yesterday I had egg on the left side. Today I have egg on the right. Dylan Groenewegen.
Close.
Let's just call him Green Path.
The Green Path.
But before we get into it, and we'll spend some time talking about today. We'll spend some time talking about the controversy of Andre Greipel and Fernando Gaviria in the sprint. But we'll also spend a lot of time talking about tomorrow, just because it's a key, critical, potentially devastating day for everybody in the peloton.
And there's a love-hate about
I know.
Tomorrow.
We'll talk about it.
I want to hear more about that.
But before we get to that, today's show is brought to you by my friends at Onnit, O-N-N-I-T. For those of you who follow my social media or follow my fitness the last few years, you would have seen me spending a whole bunch of time over at the gym there in Austin with Coach John Wolf, spending a bunch of time with Aubrey Marcus, the founder, Kyle Kingsbury, the head of human optimization. The stuff that I learned over at Onnit and the way John Wolf had me moving I was a banged up, old, overweight runner, and they got me moving again, my hips, my low back, even my shoulders, my neck. It was transformational for me. I mean, I went from being a 45-year-old guy to feeling like I was 25. Fast forward to now being in Aspen for this show. And what do? Well, here's what you do. You go to onnit.com/themove, and you can sign up for their new home fitness program called Onnit 6. Everything we were doing in the gym there, which you all may or may not have seen, you can now do at home. You don't need all the expensive equipment. You don't need to worry about what you're wearing. You don't need to worry about who's looking at you or not. You can do it all at home. And when you also go to onnit.com/themove, you can sign up for a free trial of Alpha Brain. We have some sitting around here somewhere, I thought.
I'll grab it.
Well, just scroll down. Free 30-day trial of Alpha Brain, their number one seller. For those of you who sometimes struggle with memory and focus, this is actually the powder version. But there's both the powder version and pill version. There's the pills. JB's been taking these pills.
I know. I've been.
Check that out. It's free. I mean, why wouldn't you? Onnit.com/themove. What do we got first, JB? I'm really excited, because I like watching sports events where people get real excited to get third. And we're at halftime of Belgium and England. They're playing for third.
That's mind-boggling to you, isn't it?
It's just so weird. I mean, how happy do you get when you get third? Like you jump up. I mean, what is that?
That's going on right now, which is why we had an earlier start today, and we're going to have an earlier start tomorrow.
And then we'll be back to normal sleep.
And then World Cup wraps up, and I think a lot of especially Europeans will start focusing on the tour more.
Right.
But they've got divided attention right now.
It's been interesting. I've seen some stats that the TV ratings are down fairly significantly. We're at an interesting time in cycling where people are trying. I saw a lot of articles today just being very, very critical of yesterday's stage at 231 kilometers, 143 miles, and how boring it was. I mean, we've been doing this for 100 years. There's always boring days in the Tour de France. Did you just wake up and think that was terribly boring, and that's why the TV numbers are down? And you could point to the World Cup, you could point to Wimbledon, you could point to boring stages. Who knows? But that's part of it, and not every day can be like tomorrow. I mean, today was boring, and so I don't know. The sport is trying to find itself. Read another interesting interview with Patrick Lefevre from Quickstep, which I thought was, I thought he Lefevre is a no bullshit guy. So he, headline, Lefevre laments the fallout in the Froome case. He says, we are specialists in cycling, grumbled Lefevre. We love to shoot ourselves in the feet. I'm looking for sponsors, and I can tell you it's not a good look for cycling, referring to Froome. He says, I'm a cycling owner. I go look for sponsors. The people ask me, what's up with this 4-time winner being a suspect. The other guy, Wiggins, there's also a lot of mystery around him. And the American guy, 7 times, gone. You can close your book, says the potential sponsor. He says, I'm not a fan of Froome and I'm not an enemy of Froome. I'm neutral, but I think everybody has a right to defend himself. But the most important line in this interview, which was on VeloNews.com, he says, everybody who, quote, blames this case too early should be ashamed. Whoever leaked this should be put up on a cross.
Dang.
It's super critical, but, and I'm getting off topic a little bit, but this is a sport that's not a unified, organized sport. And I agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
And with all of the stuff that we've gone through the last 5-10 years, I mean, at the end of it, you have to say, okay, how did we net out here? I know what I think. What do y'all think?
You're basically, I do often wonder about what he's talking about. It's like the media that covers cycling is not a love of it, like most other sports.
And we're dysfunctional,
Mm-hmm.
so it's easier. You can't necessarily blame them, actually. I mean, because it's easy pickings. It's like, oh, look at these idiots.
Mm-hmm.
How about we just go run shot over that sport?
Now,
I digress.
Yeah, not only is World Cup going on and it's going to wrap up this weekend, but you wanted to talk about the tennis match. There was a record.
No, this is before
tennis
before we get into cycling. I actually like tennis. I should check what's going on with Djokovic and Nadal. But this American kid, John Isner, who's just kind of climbed his way up the world rankings. He's now top 10. We used to, tennis fans, American tennis fans, we were just used to it. We had Sampras and Agassi and Courier and Chang, and we dominated. And now we got nothing. But this Isner kid is climbing his way up. Anyways, he plays this South African guy, Kevin Anderson. Their match was a record at Wimbledon yesterday, 6 hours and 36 minutes.
Wow.
They go to the fifth. He wins the tiebreaker. This South African, Kevin Anderson, wins 26-24 in the final tiebreaker. I mean, that's an endurance event.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
I love that.
I know you're a tennis fan. Do you play? Do you ever play?
No.
Can you play?
No. Well, I can play anything. A lot of it I don't play very good. But you know who's gotten to be a great tennis player is George Hincapie.
Really?
So just like I've become obsessed with golf and play the game as much as I can, George is that way with tennis. He loves tennis. He wants to talk about tennis. He wants to talk about tennis technique. He wants to talk about tennis scores and blah, blah, blah. But speaking of George finally made it in. We promised y'all yesterday that we were going to have a members-only happy hour with George and I. Well, his flight, they couldn't get into Aspen due to our airport is now closed because of the fires down valley. George made it into Denver at 11, he got here about 2 a.m. But we have George, for our members, sitting right over here on the couch at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, so it's 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. He and I, you guys can ask him questions, special member-only email. You can ask him questions about tennis. If I were a member and I would ask him about tomorrow's cobbled stage. That's his forte.
Yeah, he knows that terrain very well.
He knows that better than tennis. But if you're not a member, unfortunately you can't tune in, but we'd love for you to join us. So go to wedo.team, slide on over to Season Pass, sign up, $60 for the entire year. Right away, you get this T-shirt, members-only tee. I love this tee.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll explain again. Last night we explained what the icons meant. We'll explain it again tonight. We'd love for y'all to join us. Head on over to wedo.team, Season Pass, Georgia night tonight, 5 p.m. Mountain.
Okay. So today, although you described it as boring, and many would.
It was.
Tomorrow it's going to ignite. But it was not without controversy.
Yeah.
A couple of people relegated to last.
Well, yeah, and so
let's describe that for those who have not seen it.
Well, again, congrats to Dylan Greenpath Grunewagen, and we have a clip of him actually saying his name from our friend David Michaels from NBC. But Dylan Grunewagen was clearly the fastest. But this action on the left side between Andrea Greipel and Fernando Gaviria was. This is why I had to almost close my eyes because it's so intense. And the commissars ended up, back up. There was a bunch of discussion with Christian and Bob Key and other people on on is Gaviria going to get disqualified. The first move was kind of saving himself. The second move with all the headbutting they thought was over the line. I looked at it and thought, you know what? The guy's defending himself. Greipel is coming over on him.
Pushing him into the barriers.
Into the barriers.
And
it's not like you're just coming over on some guy and maybe he can move left. He had nowhere to go. He wasn't going to hit the brakes. These guys don't hit the brakes. Mark Cavendish at this point in his career hits the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
When you're young like those guys, you don't hit the brakes. So then you start headbutting.
Well, those guys instinctively know how to use their head and shoulders to protect themselves.
I'm going to get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the UCI commissars didn't disqualify Gaviria only. They disqualified both of them. And I think that I agree with that decision. And I rarely agree with anything the UCI does or certainly what the commissars do. But I agree with that decision. So for that, we're going to make them the patron of the day.
Did you ever think you'd be doing that?
No. In fact, it's kind of hard to believe. But one thing I want to point out for the listener who may not know this, that move that Gaviria was making, you saw him if you watched the finish. I mean, he was all over his bike. How he kept the bike up, I have no idea. While you're banging your head is now sideways. Mm-hmm. Like if I put my head sideways, I just fall over.
Mm-hmm.
So he's banging on Greipel. But keep in mind that, we're watching Fernando Gaviria in the Tour de France. But this is a guy who's a world champion on the track in 2016 in the Omnium, 2015 in the Omnium, Pan Am champ in the Omnium and the team pursuit, 2014 champ in the Omnium. I mean, he's a world multi-time world champion. He's a junior world champion as well on the track. So he can do these things with his eyes closed. Like you and I can't do that. Nobody listening can do that. Those guys that grew up on the track, and we're talking about racing on a velodrome, they can do that with their eyes closed. That's how you stay up.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done that thousands of times.
I know. Yeah, anybody that's ever ridden in a group and bumped, 9 times out of 10 you go down. These guys are amazing at how they use their bodies to stay up. Yeah. And so one of the things that came in mind to me, so they were relegated to the back of the peloton for the day.
Right.
Last year, at about this time, maybe even a little earlier, we saw Sagan DQ'd from the entire race.
I know, but JB, these are different.
This seemed more blatant back and forth than what we saw with Sagan, and they threw him out.
Perhaps, but I think that was the wrong decision last year. But I'm just going to say the reason it is different is because Mark Cavendish was on the ground with a broken body, and so it looks different. People's reaction is different. The pressure on them is just different. So you can't. It's just different.
What are these guys saying? Like, say Greipel and Gaviria. Do they have a conversation about that? Are they pissed at each other? Gaviria.
I don't know.
Are they pissed at each other?
I was trying to watch for if they're pissed at each other. Oftentimes, as soon as they cross the finish line, and I mean immediately after they cross the finish line, you'll see some, you'll see some heat,
some
you'll
shouting,
see them yelling, confronting, pointing, pushing, and I didn't see any of that. So maybe they could be, fairly cordial, very cordial, and just look at each other and go, "Hey, Rubin's racing."
Yeah,
sorry, bro.
Yeah. Move on. Live to fight another day.
I don't know. Rubin is racing, but I guess Rubin's not racing in cycling. No, to quote the NASCAR crowd.
So we saw Dan Martin lose time, 1:14.
He immediately, and we were watching the Aussie feed at the time, and the camera just caught him when it was going by, and you could see on his face he was not feeling good, and McEwen caught it too. He said that Dan Martin's got problems, and so when he got going again, initially his guys, he had 3 or 4 guys with him. He was having a hard time just sitting on the wheel. He finally found the rhythm, but he's still, at that point in the race, they actually brought back about 30 seconds, but then they ended up, once that peloton really gets going for the field sprint, there's nothing you can do. So he ended up losing 1:14. This is a guy who many thought was an outsider, had an outside chance to win the overall. So now he's lost more time, but he's also got a body that's hit the deck pretty hard.
I love these clips we're getting. Obviously, we've struggled with some pronunciation. You hear it
You
different
still
from
don't say Gaviria right. Gaviria.
Gaviria. Did I say Gaviria again?
Yeah, you did.
That's what we were doing day
Yeah,
one. I've
Gaviria.
got him Gaviria. And we're getting these clips sent
Our
to us.
listeners are probably really sick of me saying that.
Once you start saying it, you just keep saying it. But we got the official pronunciation of it's even funny just the way it rolls off the tongue. We're pronouncing it correctly, but not quick enough. Like Grunewagen. I feel like I'm saying it right, but let's hear it from the man himself. This is Dylan Grunewagen saying it the way it should be said.
Just so you all know.
Yeah, here we go.
Just so we make sure you say your name correctly, can you just say your name so we say it correctly on NBC?
Yeah, only the name?
Yeah, full name.
Okay. Dylan Groenewegen.
One more time.
Dylan Groenewegen.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Dylan Groenewegen.
These writers have everybody coming up to them just asking how to have their name pronounced. They're probably going, what is wrong
Yeah,
with
they're like,
everybody?
oh God, here comes this guy, this weird guy again. I don't know who that guy is. I know David's sending them to us, but that's not his voice. That's not.
Yeah, I
him.
don't know. They're not on camera.
Groenewegen. You kind of have to. Anyways,
And you got to let it roll quickly.
yeah.
This is a day where we're going to talk a lot about tomorrow.
Yes, we are.
Tomorrow
Yes,
is
we
a
are.
big stage, and I'll let Lance explain to you why this is so significant to this year's tour.
Before we do that, let's just take care of a little more business. Talk about it every day. This company, PowerDot, and as these guys continue to hit the deck on the Tour de France, you just wonder. We already know that actually, I believe because of this show and because of this podcast and because of the relationship with PowerDot, these guys are calling the company asking if they can get units sent over. This is the most portable, effective, kick-ass E-stem unit, electrostim unit in the planet. I mean, this is all it is, JB. Bluetooth powered, enabled by the app on your phone. The pods are super small.
Where's it helped you most? Lower back?
So I blow my low back once a month, and so this comes in super handy. You know, you've seen me walk around the office with my self-diagnosed sciatica. Helped a lot there. But the device is cranking. They are enjoying a bunch of success because of the show, which I'm super thankful for. But honestly, for all our listeners, you can go to powerdot.com/themove. They're giving away one free unit a day, but you got to sign up. And then also for our listeners, 25% off sales of these units. And by the way, part two, they're going fast. So just get over there and check it out quick.
All right, tomorrow.
Let's talk about tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this in the preview show many months ago about how they were going to spend a lot of time on the cobble sections for the tour.
Yeah. This is a record. This is a record amount of cobbles for the tour. You have 15 sectors.
How long is a typical sector?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
I can tell you right now. Let me get my readers on, JB. They're anywhere from... And let me just make one point clear. So if you want to watch the race tomorrow, just keep in mind the race starts earlier because of the World Cup final. Let me just get a check on who's going to get third. Belgium still leading. Woo! So the race starts earlier, but the reason I bring it up is the first cobblestone section is with 109 kilometers to go. The stage is short. The stage is 156 kilometers. So to think, I mean, they're going to be so stressed. Granted, the first sector it's not a major sector, but still, they will be sprinting before that first sector, and that's 109 to go. So that sector is 1.6 kilometers, then the next sector is another 1.6. Then you get a shorter one at 900, then at 2,000, 2K, 2 kilometers. Then you get 2.4 kilometers, 1.4. So, I mean, they're anywhere from 1 to 2.5K. But they start early, and so folks, you got to get up early, and this is going to be an action-packed day. The only other thing I want to say is, you'll see this tomorrow when you watch. I'm talking about this like I know what I'm talking about because I actually don't. Never done Paris-Roubaix. The only cobbles I've ever done are the cobbles that we did in the Tour in 2004 and 2010, and then I would have done cobbles at the Tour Flanders. But I've never done a lot of these really extreme sectors. But you'll see tomorrow they categorize the sectors. And for you fans of Paris-Roubaix, and again, tonight, George Hincapie will be much better to talk about this on the couch. but they'll anywhere from 1 to 5 stars. So in Roubaix, the Forest of Ehrenberg, the most famous sector, is 5 stars, which means a normal person can't ride their bike through that. It's absurd. But tomorrow they've ranked these sectors. I went back and looked, assuming they use the same rankings as Roubaix, which I think they will. I've gone back and looked at all the sectors. There are 4 4-star sectors, which, I mean, a 4-star is rough as shit. It's terrible. And the last 4-star sector is the second one from the finish. This is the point I made in the preview show, is that, and then the final sector is 3 stars, which is also rough. There's a lot of just really rough cobbles right before the finish.
So who in the GC is suited for this?
Tom Dumoulin, Vincenzo Nibali,
Van Avermaet?
Greg Van Avermaet, who has the yellow jersey. He'll keep the yellow jersey unless he has a mechanical or crashes. I mean, he's not going to lose the yellow jersey if he stays upright. I'm curious on how they're going to treat that with regards to Richie Porte, who is their GC favorite, but is going to struggle. So those guys, whether it's Richie Porte, Chris Froome, you know who else it suits? I think another track rider, Geraint Thomas. So we talked about
And there's
how Team Sky
a
has co-leaders. But anyways, they do, and it suits him. So I got Geraint Thomas, Tom Dumoulin, Vincenzo Nibali. Nibali has to have a great day tomorrow. He has to. He has to have it on the eve of the mountains. He has to get some time back because they sucked so bad in the team time trial. And look for Dumoulin. Dumoulin also has to get back time because of what happened the other day in addition to the penalty. But folks, pay attention to the stars tomorrow. They will the categorized sectors are starred, so 4 stars, 3 stars. I mean, you got a 4-star section 17 kilometers before the finish, just 10 miles. A 3-star section 5 miles before the finish. They come out of it and they're at 3.5 miles to go.
Could we see GC contenders lose as much time as they might on a tough mountain stage tomorrow?
Yeah, sure, because a GC contender might, on a bad day in the mountains, he might lose a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you won't see GC contenders lose as much time as the Gruppetto loses in the mountains, because that's 20 minutes. We're not going to see 20-minute losses unless you have a major problem. But multiple people are going to lose 1 to 2 minutes.
So how do you think, I know it's pure speculation, but how do you think most of the riders feel about this huge cobble day?
Look, all of the people that I just named, right, these light, Wafely, Roman Bardet type people, they don't like it. We haven't asked them, but I'm pretty sure they hate this idea. But Greg Van Avermaet, who has the yellow jersey, he loves it. It was interesting to watch Christian Van de Velde and Bob Roll talking about it today, and they were very critical. They were like, we don't like it. And I get it that you don't like it, but I'm sitting there going, because I don't have to do it, right?
Good point.
I like it. Like I think it's. I sit there every day as a fan, and as a fan, I'm like, I cannot wait to get up.
Yeah, and see tomorrow, and it's going to go down early.
Bedlam.
Yeah,
and it's going to go down early. And that's one thing that struck me. 109 from the finish. It's not like they're going to say, "Oh,
let's save it to the end.
We got a long ways to go. Let's just all chill over this cobble section." They will be lined up,
and then people will have issues and be chasing early.
I don't think anything will happen that early, but the stress in the peloton will be high from the minute that Christian Prudhomme drops the flag. It's on.
Do you think the people who aren't excited about all the cobbles in the Tour are just basically saying, that's for the classics. That's for Roubaix and Flanders, and let's not mix the two.
JB, do you know what country Roubaix sits in?
Yes, I do.
Okay. It sits in France.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now speaking as a fan, not as somebody that has to race tomorrow morning.
Right.
It's in France. What event are we talking about for 3 weeks?
We're talking about the Tour.
Oh, the Tour de France.
Yeah.
I like it. I really do.
It's different. It's We end up referencing NASCAR from time to time because you're friends with Jimmy and ride with him a lot here.
He's racing tonight in
but
Kentucky.
it's like when they go do the road race. You know what I mean? It's just exciting because it's different. You're taking these guys that typically do one thing and putting them in a different scenario. Yeah. That's it's a weird analogy,
Look,
but
it comes down. I mean, the people would not like it because if somebody were to get hurt and not be able to finish, and therefore their tour is over, their fans look at it and go, "Why do we have to do that?" And it's a shame, and maybe it takes away from. I mean, if Chris Froome, I hope this doesn't happen, but if he crashes out tomorrow, the fan can go, well, the race lost, right? Because we're not going to see Chris Froome in the Alps or the Pyrenees or the time trials in Paris. So that took away a major player or, a key actor in this play. And so I can see that too, but I fall on the side of getting super excited about it.
I know you're always looking at the weather, and tomorrow's going to be dry on the cobbles.
You know what it is going to be? It's going to be hot. It's showing 86 in Roubaix, which always means it's a little warmer, probably humid. 86 in Europe is 86 is hot.
Mm-hmm. But you were looking even farther ahead with the weather.
I always look at, we've had beautiful weather up till now. If this is accurate, what I'm getting on my weather app, they're calling for some pretty significant storms and rain next week in the Alps. So the riders are going to go from all this hot weather, dry, to colder weather with rain, with climbs and descents, and it'll be a shock if that indeed is true that it does rain and it gets chilly. Hey, one thing I want to note, because I always say this and they never do it, and just because it makes so much sense to do it. That's me. That's my phone. Monday's the rest day. They normally always transfer on the rest day. I think that makes no sense. They're actually making the transfer tomorrow night after this stage. So you get through this stage, have an earlier finish, which helps the transfer, and then they're going to fly down to Annecy, which I think for the rider, just get down there, get settled, get situated, and then spend your rest day resting and recovering, a small ride, focusing on diet.
They typically,
massage.
Okay, I understand.
So you're not sitting on a plane. That whole thing takes hours.
I'm just thinking, anyone who travels often, and most of us have done it that's not a restful thing. I never thought about that. They usually would travel on a rest day. They're knocking it out the night before, so they really, truly could get a rest day and freshen up.
I agree. I love it.
Good point.
I love it. And the poor staff, in case you're wondering about these saps, after the stage, they get to drive 780 kilometers from Roubaix down to Annecy. That's about 500 miles. They're not going to get in until late.
That's brutal. The support that goes into it. All right. If I'm going to mention this because I tee up some more questions and comments for Lance. If you didn't hear yesterday's show, you've got to hear the question that came in at the end of it. Yeah. I'll just say that. That was a highlight.
I just posted that this morning on my Instagram. And by the way, I because I talked about him yesterday and tagged him in the post, I started following Mario Cipollini.
Yeah.
He's not verified.
Oh, he doesn't have an official account.
How can Chippo not be verified? I mean, we this is absurd.
Yeah.
He's Cipollini.
He's
the only guy that ever got laid in the Tour de France. How's he not verified? That just that alone gets you verified. What did you ever do? World champion, Milan San Remo, blah blah blah. And
all right,
and to make intercourses.
I'll get
Tour de France.
I'll get these questions and comments ready for you.
Last bit of business. Let's talk about our friends at High Brew Coffee. Cold brew for those who do. I mean, that's made for us. JB, 6 different flavors, all natural energy, 2 cups of coffee per. And the thing I mentioned yesterday, which I think is just so fascinating, is that because it's cold brewed, the process takes, like a lot of times when I drink too much coffee in the morning, I get like this heartburn and gross, like burpy, just nastiness. 67% less of that in the cold brewing process. So for you people that love caffeine but struggle with the acidity, hey, High Brew. Choose your flavor. We got 6 different flavors. And as we learned the other day, you can make a mean margarita with it. Martini.
Yeah.
And we're getting a bunch of emails from folks that are finding it all over the place. We just had one from a reader,
Los Angeles.
a listener in Los Angeles. Had one the other day. A lady found it in her local Walmart. You can find it on Amazon, Whole Foods. Check it out.
Hi, Lance and JB. Tuned into the podcast yesterday and heard you use the intel on Tom Dumoulin's penalty that I had sent you. It's cool to see the membership working two ways. Makes signing up even more of a good idea. That was Wouter, remember? Wouter.
Yes, because Wouter, we don't like to work that much. So it's better if people like you do the work for us.
Yeah, it does go both ways. A lot of you or members are sending in questions and comments and stuff from the happy hour that we're using in the show. We appreciate it. This is, let's see. I clearly haven't seen as many tour races as you guys, but I can't recall ever seeing a breakaway be successful. When you see riders out there on a breakaway who clearly aren't GC contenders, are they out there to get some TV time and advertise their sponsors? No shame in that, but it doesn't look like much fun killing yourself for a couple hours only to get swallowed up by the peloton. So basically, Bill in Chicago is trying to understand why they're doing that.
Well,
What's the deal?
Bill, because first of all, they stand 0% chance of making it to the finish. 0. Mike Chambers, my buddy, texted me the other day. There was a breakaway out there. He said, what are the chances that they make it to the finish? I said, 0.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. They just, the first week, there's too many interests with these sprinters teams, green jersey points, etc. They just don't make it. And so that is simply for TV time, for time to show their friends that they're in the Tour de France, that are at home watching. It just doesn't happen. And by the way, too, and I thought about this morning, and I want to make this point, the teams in the back that are controlling the race, that are controlling the peloton, whether you are the yellow jersey team that's controlling the peloton, or whether or not you're the sprinters teams that's controlling it and reeling it in, you want them out there. If you bring them back, then all of a sudden people start attacking again, and then you have to start chasing it down. They want that break to go. Let it settle into 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it is. Just hold them there, because when they're 5 minutes up the road, trust me, nobody else is going to attack from the back. The attacks stop. It completely neutralizes the peloton, which, and I've been in that position many, many times, you just want that break to go.
The directors, the teams, they know the math. They know that a break is X number, and they know how much is left, and they do the math, and they know when to go to the front and pull it back.
Yeah, it is a science.
Yeah. Lance, who is the alpha male in the peloton? Basically, who's the dude that has their way and others will always submit? Who is that?
Now
This is
or
from
before?
Jimmy. Now.
I don't know. I'm in Aspen. I'm not in the peloton. I honestly don't know. I guess we could ask around. We should ask Lawson.
Well, Jimmy says, Jimmy says, sorry for the machismo, but I spent 30 years in the U.S. Army, 6 years deployed in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Balkans. There's always an alpha male.
Dang. Yeah,
That's why they're asking.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out. But before we do, or while we do, let's thank Jimmy for his service. Man, 6 years over in those places. Dude.
So that we can sit here.
We all sit here in an air-conditioned studio in Aspen, Colorado.
Yeah. Neil writes, loving the podcast. I love the season pass only being $60. Thanks for making it affordable. Without the swag, the content you're putting out is well worth the $60. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome.
Let's see. Oh, you mentioned casually. I can't remember if it was in the happy hour or one of the after a Q&A on a show, but you said that I only eat 5 foods. You did say that. and several people have written in. I apologize for not knowing it. Maybe this is Robin. Wants to know, what are those 5 foods?
Well, I was I'd probably exaggerate.
I know it's a bit of an exaggeration.
Well, I eat the same. Normally, I eat the same thing for breakfast. I'll have scrambled eggs and a piece of toast or an English muffin, and then for lunch it was like a running joke. Like for 15 years, I had a chicken salad sandwich for lunch every day. Like this is all I ate. Maybe not 15 years, but for a good 10 years. I mean, we just went to Whole Foods and just bought that pre-made chicken salad, and I just eat it it's so easy. Just slap it on the bread, be done. Dinner we go to, I will say this, with dinner, we here in Aspen, we go to like 3 places. We just, I don't like to experiment. I don't like.
You don't?
No, I don't.
And then when you were racing, you probably
Well,
would
then it was
experiment
just-
even less.
Yeah. Speaking of talking about pasta, I ate a lot of pasta back then. But our friend Tori has gone dark on us.
Oh
Tori,
no.
she's better deal on us.
Yeah, Tori's our 10-year-old fan. Yeah, we need to hear from you.
She's my best friend, according
You're
to
your
her.
BFF. One last thing. This is from Rob. How about Boulder Dude interviewing Sagan? That would be epic. No, I'm not going to
Oh,
put
the
you.
two. Oh, I have to do the two.
I'm not going to put you on the spot to do it today, but I saw this and I laughed. Maybe you can work on that, how that might be. Because last year we heard from Boulder Dude.
I could script that out.
Okay.
I could script that out.
I'll give you time to work on that.
It would
but-
be fun. You'd have to get up. Like I'd have to sit here and I'd sit right on the edge, but I'd have to go on both sides, and make parties. Peter Sagan. I'd have to wear Somebody asked me the other day, why is he wearing ski goggles on the podium? Like they just couldn't. This was a non-cycling fan that was watching the race with us, and they're like, I don't get it. Why is he wearing ski goggles? I'm like, dude, because you're asking the question. His sponsor and 100% that gives him his sponsors his glasses. Everybody that's watching it going, why is he? And guess what? And they're talking about the brand. Duh.
Right. He's a smart man.
This is a good idea. Make a party, intercourses.
So work on that down the road. Boulder
Taylor
Dude.
Finney is our Boulder Dude. He actually is Boulder Dude because he grew up in Boulder.
He really is.
He gave me. I couldn't. We watched this last night. Last thing. He made a little Instagram story, tagged me in it, and was talking. And I here's what I've come to realize is I just don't get it. I don't get it. I'm too old. It's over my head and under my knees, and I cannot get it. I'm too old. Like what he said wasn't mean. It wasn't funny. It was just like I just don't get it.
Even when he was addressing you, you're like, I don't get it.
No, I'm like, dude, I
Taylor.
you, and I have teenagers.
Yeah.
I should know. I just don't get it.
Send your questions and comments to the move at wedo.team. Check out the shop at wedo.team. A bunch of cool gear in there. And then don't forget, for members, season pass holders, George Hincapie joins us tonight. Confirmed he is in town. Saw him this morning. There you go.
All right. Thanks, y'all.